To everybody, good morning and welcome to this Creative Zone webinar. It's about the 6th or 7th webinar, or maybe more. I think I lost count. I would say it's more than 7 or 8 that we've done. Today's webinar is on the topic of Dubai or UAE residency through company formation. Just as a quick introduction to the people that we have here in the panel, we have Mr. Nilesh Ashar. He is a tax partner at KPMG. With Nilesh, we have partnered in several locations and we work quite closely in recommending clients to Nilesh and to KPMG in any matters that relate to tax and other issues. And on the panel, we also have Jamie Harvey. He's a senior business setup advisor, and Alistair Paine as well, one of our top business setup advisors in our team. So to all the attendees, thank you so much for connecting. It's a pleasure to have you there. Maybe as a quick introduction, I could say and explain who Creative Zone is, because many of you, maybe it's the first time that you hear about Creative Zone. Creative Zone is the largest business setup company in the UAE, in the United Arab Emirates. We were established 10 years ago, and we've been growing ever since. We have helped about 36,000 entrepreneurs and investors set up their businesses and deal with their residencies, their visas. We help people with banking solutions, tax and accounting solutions, and many others. So today's topic is on this issue of UAE residency through company formation. And we've seen that the UAE, and particularly Dubai, has been a hub for attracting investors to come from all over the world, to come and set up their businesses and use Dubai as a place for them to do business, to travel from. Dubai has that good sort of connectivity with around the world through Emirates, which is one of the world's largest airlines. So maybe to get started, Alistair, if you can give us an idea, an introduction on what is that position that Dubai has as a hub of business, and why is it attracting so many businesses and investors to come and settle here in the country?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Lorenzo, and good morning to everyone who's tuning in today. As you've correctly said, I mean, Dubai really is the hub that connects East and West, and always has been. I think will continue to be. It's one of the safest countries in the world. Myself, I've lived here pretty much all my life. I grew up here. It's got a first-class education system, first-class transportation system, and the economy as well is very SME and entrepreneur-friendly. The tax environment here in the UAE, and Nilesh will certainly advise better than me here, is arguably one of the most favorable in the world. You have no corporation tax here, you have no personal income tax, no capital gains tax. Really, there is only value-added tax to concern yourself with. So it presents a landscape, Dubai and the UAE in general, which is very favorable and attractive to entrepreneurs and SMEs. And anyone who is a global nomad and is seeking a destination to settle down in, for me, there is no better country than the UAE. I think it's an amazing country to live and work in, as we can all attest to. And, you know, I think that they're going strength to strength. So absolutely, I think, you know, I can't speak highly enough about Dubai and the UAE, just from personal experience, but also business experience as well.
Nilesh, what would be your take on this sort of position that Dubai has as this international hub of business?
Yeah, no, I mean, I just echo Alistair's views on it. I think if you look at as a business hub, and if you look at other jurisdictions around the world, which are your typical, headquartered business hub locations, you look at the likes of Singapore, Hong Kong, UAE, South Africa, Cyprus of the world, and then the Caymans and the BVIs for setting up offshore structures. If you look at the UAE, it has a proper economy. It has, there are genuine businesses that are set up in the country. The fiscal and the regulatory system is very strong. The political stability is there in the region, from as far as the UAE is concerned. And I think from a tax and fiscal perspective, which other regional hub can you find which does not have a corporation tax system or a personal tax legislation? Yes, VAT has just been introduced and it's at one of the lowest rates at 5%. But which other regional hubs will have a low rate of VAT at 5% and no personal and corporation tax? So the advantages of the safety, the political stability, the fiscal stability, followed by a low tax or a no tax environment does make it extremely attractive for businesses. And I guess which is why we're all also here in the Emirates.
Excellent. Well, to the attendees, we have about 70 people connected. We would like to welcome your questions. There's a little chat box there or a Q&A that you can put your questions through to the panelists and ask any particular things that you would like to learn throughout this conversation. So, Jamie, you've been as business setup advisor here in the UAE for quite a few years. What are the things that resonate the most you feel when it comes to international investors coming to us at Creative Zone and investigating the benefits and sort of the best vehicles for them to set up here in the country?
Yeah, good question, Lorenzo, and thank you very much for everybody who's joined this morning. Recently, I suppose you could say over the course of the past couple of years with my experience in Creative Zone, we've had a huge volume of foreign investors looking to set up vehicles within the UAE for different purposes, but primarily for banking purposes to enable them to conduct their work overseas, whether it be between a trade or something service related. Now, one of the key questions that people tend to ask for is, can I obtain a tax residency certificate? And the answer is yes, depending on the nature of your business and the structure that we would implement for you. Now, one of the key things to note is in order to set up such a business within the UAE, where you would be personal tax exempt, and obviously corporate tax to a certain degree, would be obtaining the likes of a residency visa within the UAE, wherein you would actually have yourself a valid Emirates ID that shows that you are somebody who does reside within the United Arab Emirates. Now, in terms of options available to you, there is a lot of options out there, primarily between free zone, which can be seen as an offshore to a certain degree, however, gives you the ability to open up a personal bank account within the UAE, or alternatively through a Dubai mainland company setup. Ultimately, between the two would depend on how you are conducting your business. But to answer your question in short there, I suppose, Lorenzo, what we're finding now is a lot of people are conducting their business between, whether it be China to Malaysia or China to Europe. They're really looking to invoice from a local account from the UAE. And by doing so, are setting up the likes of a simple free zone structure to facilitate that.
Right. Alistair, what kind of structures are you mostly setting up these days for international investors? What are the benefits that people are getting for this?
Good question, Lorenzo. I mean, to be honest, it's a real mix. As James correctly pointed out, it really does depend on the requirements of the investor. Are they just looking for visas? Are they doing some business locally? Are they using this as an invoicing vehicle, etc.? So depending on those requirements would really dictate the solution and the jurisdiction we would advise. You're generally presented with two options when you're looking to set up a business here in the UAE, and that is free zone versus mainland. And again, based on your requirements, we'll dictate which way you go with that. If you're doing majority of the business offshore outside of the UAE, then the free zone structure arguably makes more sense. If you're doing more business locally, then there's a very good argument that the mainland structure makes more sense. In terms of trends we're seeing currently, I would say the mainland setup is becoming increasingly more popular, mainly due to the fact that the barriers to set up a mainland company that have traditionally been there have been lowered. And it's now really as easy and as cost effective as it's ever been to set up a mainland company here. That's in conjunction with all the FDI initiatives that the Dubai government are running. Expatriate investors can own the business now on a huge number of activities in the mainland, as well as foreign companies looking to create subsidiaries and branches here as well. There are new FDI laws which again allow 100% ownership to those companies. So yes, definitely an increase in the mainland, but the free zone model will always appeal, particularly to the international investor, because of course there's no local involvement whatsoever.
We have a question here from one of the attendees saying, what are the key differences between a mainland company and a free zone company? I mean, people from maybe in this webinar, they're not familiar with what a mainland company means. Can we explain a little bit more on the differences on this?
Absolutely. So let's start with free zone, because I think that's a bit more internationally sort of recognized. The free zone or free trade zone as it's officially known, is a special economic zone, if you like. And here in the UAE, we have over 50 free zones dotted around all 7 emirates of the UAE. Now, each free zone will cater to a particular business activity or a particular industry. So there are free zones, for example, focused on media. There are free zones focused on shipping and logistics, etc. And there are also free zones that cater to all of these business activities as well. So free zones are allow expatriate investors to own the business 100%. So you don't have to involve any local sponsor. You retain full capital and profits from the business. There's full repatriation of profits. Depending on the free zone that you select, your annual maintenance requirements are also quite low as well. So there are certain free zones where you don't need to submit annual audits every year. You don't need to submit any paid up share capital. And free zone structures allow you to obtain UAE residency. They allow you to obtain UAE bank accounts, both on a corporate and a personal level. And for foreign companies, you can also obtain tax residency, both on a corporate and a personal level as well. You then presented with your second option, which would be in the mainland. Now, in the mainland, the requirements are slightly different, and it's very much based on business activity. Certain businesses in the mainland have to have a local sponsor owning the share, minimum 51% of the shares. Some activities need 100% local ownership. And then there are some activities that can be 100% owned by expatriates. The mainland company setup offers investors or entrepreneurs who are looking to do business locally a bit more flexibility in terms of how they operate. And what I mean by that is, as per the UAE commercial companies law here, free zone companies should only really be operating within the free zones. They are technically speaking classed as an offshore jurisdiction. So if you are looking to do business locally, again, the mainland license would make more sense. What I would say, if anyone else, anyone attendees has any questions, please reach out to us. It is quite confusing company setup here, full stop. But that is our role, to advise and explain really which option is best for you.
That's excellent, Alistair. Thank you for that. And we're going to go a little bit more in depth into the pricing, to the different structures. Before we do that, Nilesh, let's go a little bit deeper into the whole tax world and the benefits of setting up in the UAE. What are the sort of the steps? What are the benefits of companies, let's say, and individuals from around the world from a tax point of view that the UAE has to offer?
Yeah, I mean, it's fairly straightforward in that sense, in some sense. So we did touch upon it. There is no, at an individual level, there are no personal taxes in the UAE. There are obviously there are the fees that you would pay to set up your company or to get visas and medical, but there are no taxes as such that you pay, but you still are eligible to a tax residency certificate, provided you meet the minimum number of days criteria to be physically present in the UAE, which is 183 days of physical presence. It does entitle you to a tax residency certificate. And what that really means is that you are able to prove to your tax authorities in another country who may be alleging, or in your home country where you are a national of, or maybe living prior to the move in the UAE, that you are actually a tax resident of UAE and are taxable on your worldwide income only in the UAE, where there is no personal income tax. If you then look at the corporate side of things, there is no corporation tax locally on the profits that a company earns in the UAE. And corporates can also get a tax residency certificate. Both free zone and mainland companies do get tax residency certificates, provided they meet certain criteria in terms of minimum years of existence and then having bank accounts and bank statements and so on and so forth. There are no withholding taxes as well. So any profits that you repatriate back to your home country is not subject to any withholding taxes out of the UAE, and neither is it subject to any exchange control restrictions. And with the UAE dirham, the currency of the UAE dirham being pegged to the US dollar, it's a fairly stable fiscal environment as well in terms of both retaining and repatriating profits out of the country. There is, I should just add, there is local VAT that has been introduced since 1st of January 2018. The rate is 5% and it applies to both goods and services. It's the lowest, if you look at the 166 odd countries around the world that have introduced VAT, it's probably one of the lowest rates in the world. That has just been introduced, and in some sense, it has been, it has been productive to the economy and the environment, particularly in the current times of low oil prices. It's actually enabled the government to have further spending on infrastructure and other projects, which again augurs well for businesses to set up in the Emirates and support on those projects. But yes, as I said, and just to add, I think one of the other distinctions between free zones and mainland from a tax perspective is that there are certain categories of free zones that have been identified as designated zones for VAT purposes. And what that means is that for any transfer or movement of goods between that free zone is not subject to VAT, whereas some of the other free zones that are non-designated zones for VAT purposes, VAT does apply on transfer of goods between those zones and outside of those zones as well. So that's the other advantage of some of the free zones, that they are also designated zones for VAT purposes.
Now, for the purpose of this webinar and the attendees that we have from many parts of the world, we've seen we have people from Africa, from Asia, from Europe connected. Let's say that we have an investor, a businessman that is setting up an e-commerce business, let's say in Nigeria, and he's operating this through his company based in Dubai with bank account of Dubai. How is the issues of taxes sort of applied in this matter?
Yeah, so I should add, and I do want to touch upon the economic substance rules on this as well. But just before that, I should have added that UAE also has a very strong double tax treaty network, including with many of the African countries. There are over 120 odd double tax avoidance agreements in place. And what that really means is that while there is no local corporation tax in the UAE on the profits, because of tax residency certificates and double tax treaty, you can actually relieve some of the taxes back in the home country. Or in your example, where you have an e-commerce company set up in the UAE, to the extent of any income earned by the company from offshore jurisdictions from other countries, because if the revenues are booked in the UAE company, and the UAE company earns income from services or operations or activities or trade in other countries, some of those other countries may have withholding taxes that might apply on payments to a UAE company, and those taxes can be relieved or reduced under the double tax agreement that UAE has. But importantly, when those profits are accrued or accounted for in the books of the UAE company, well, there is no tax. But I think it's important that the businesses are backed up by some level of substance in the UAE. Given the recent introductions of the economic substance rules, it is prudent for businesses, for foreign individuals and companies that set up operations in the UAE to have certain minimum level of substance for certain types of activities. And those substances all around having adequate people, having adequate office premises and local expenditure, and having your board meetings, etc. in the UAE. But if you meet those substance requirements, and this is where the thinking has been moving globally by some of these jurisdictions, and UAE has committed to the OECD to implement these rules. But as long as you have certain minimum level of substance to back the income that's earned in the UAE, no local corporation tax, reduced withholding taxes on payments coming from other countries due to double tax treaty networks, no withholding tax out on profit repatriation out of the UAE. It's a pretty exciting environment to operate under.
Excellent. Well, we're getting a few really good questions from the attendees, and I'm going to keep on saying we welcome your questions. Please keep on sending them. I'm going to try to read as many of those. Alistair, we have a good question here. It says, could you please give us an indication of the costs of a company set up in the UAE versus other hubs around the world? How competitive is Dubai and the UAE internationally on this regard?
Absolutely. I think the UAE and Dubai is still competitive, but it certainly costs more here to set up a company because, as Nilesh pointed out, you don't pay any corporation tax or personal income tax. So the investor or the entrepreneur does bear some setup fees, maybe slightly higher than these other jurisdictions around the world. Just to give an idea on costs, and it's actually probably the best time ever to set up a company. I've never seen companies set up so cheap. We're offering packages starting at 8,500 dirhams in some of the free trade zones, and that goes all the way up to mainland companies which start at around 23,000 dirhams.
Let's talk dollars here so that we give a better explanation on the figure.
Yeah, absolutely. So 8,500 dirhams, approximately $2,000, just over $2,000, and 20,000 dirhams, I'd say around $5,000, just over $5,000. So those are sort of initial setup fees you're looking at. Those fees do increase if you need residency for yourself or your family. And again, depending on the jurisdiction, really does dictate the fees, but that's a good range to look at there.
Jamie, how does it work when it comes to us helping these investors organize their visas for their families, their dependent visas? How many they can get through setting up a company here?
Good question. So just to kind of go back on Creative Zone and our operations, we obviously have ourselves as the advisory team. Then in the back, we have the back operations who facilitate the entire process where they liaise with the government authorities when they would actually basically speak with immigration. They'd basically take a copy of your passport, but they would then have it stamped. Now, before that's completed, what we would need to do is arrange a medical. It's basically a standard healthcare check, which everybody undergoes within the UAE. Once that's then been approved, we would then actually go for stamping of your visa. Now, once the investor has gained their visa within the country, it then allows them to sponsor their dependents. And that can range depending from their parents right down to their maid, if they were to have one, to their children, and to anybody who is considered as dependent as a blood relative within the UAE. Going through that, we have a concierge department. The concierge department will ensure that all documents are prepared in terms of birth certificates and marriage certificates. Again, it comes back to them actually ensuring that the documents that are required to actually sponsor your dependents are prepared in accordance to the UAE law. What does that mean? It basically means that the marriage certificates and the birth certificates have been attested in the UAE embassy in the country of origin or where you perhaps got married. From the UAE side, what they would then do is have those documents then attested by the relevant departments, such as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the translation into Arabic. All of that is done under one roof, starting from ourselves, obviously advising on the correct jurisdiction, setting up the business and incorporating the actual setup itself, and then maneuvering it across to the operations department while it's obviously liaising with our concierge team, who would then work closely together to getting your visa and of course sponsoring your dependents so that you can live and reside within the UAE.
So how long would you say the entire process could take?
Roughly speaking, depending on the jurisdiction of choice, from a free trade zone perhaps, factoring in the company incorporation and going through the correct channels of through immigration, plus getting your visa and your medical test completed, approximately 36 days. And that would be quite similar to a mainland company setup as well.
But the investor himself has to be in the country here through how long for that process?
Not at all. Out of that entire process, they're only required to be here for approximately 13 days. To give you a breakdown of those 13 days, approximately 7 working days or to 8 working days will be the stamping of your visa, where you will hand over your passport to one of our drivers, if not to our operations team, where they will then send it off for stamping. That also factors in the likes of going for your medical test as well. Other than that, everything can be done remotely from their home overseas. There is no physical presence, no original documents are required, scanned copies of passports, along with your most recent entry stamp or tourist visa to when you last entered the UAE. And then some couple of basic application forms which can simply be signed and then just emailed back to us. We look after the rest of them.
Now, another important part that we help people with is with their banking solutions, right? And this is a big reason why many people come to Dubai for setting up a company, for gaining residency, and also gaining that sort of plan B in terms of a new banking hub, a new banking place that they can operate with. How can we help investors, Jamie, on this regard, on their personal banking and corporate banking?
That's a really good question, probably the most relevant one at the moment within the UAE. Setting up the company is quite straightforward from our perspective now at this point. We do it day in, day out. The biggest challenge is actually opening up the company account if you don't know what you're doing. We have a concierge department, like I reiterated, they look after the sponsoring, dependents and translation of documents. However, one of their primary focuses is actually to opening up your company bank account. Now, their role there is to actually manage the relationship with bankers that we have within the UAE. That comes from actually obtaining certain personal documents that would be required prior to you actually meeting and engaging with the banker. In addition to that, they will also look to see what the bank wants to see in terms of company overview, where you're receiving funds, what is your business activity. We don't just advise on an activity that would suit your needs to a certain degree. What we also do is we also liaise with the bank prior to engaging in any setup that we may feel be a bit of a challenge to opening up the account. So we get a bit of a confirmation prior to setting up the business. So in essence, what will happen there is the concierge team will actually open up the account for you.
Excellent. We'll touch a little bit more on banking with Alistair. Nilesh, there's a really good question here for you. It says, Nilesh, can you please elaborate on the minimum days you must spend in the UAE if you are a private individual? It says, number one, on UAE side, I understand at least a visit every 6 months, but it's challenged by OECD. And number two, for home countries, 180 days is the question. Things are a bit unclear. Can you please elaborate on this?
Yeah, so in the UAE, previously the UAE Ministry of Finance would give you a tax residency certificate as long as you had a valid residency visa, which means that you needed to just visit the UAE once every 6 months to keep your residency visa valid. And that was sufficient in the past to enable you to get a tax residency certificate. However, in line with international tax developments and UAE's commitment to the OECD to discourage businesses from using the UAE as a tax haven or for abusive tax structures, the UAE now requires 183 days physical stay in the UAE as one of the conditions to be eligible for a tax residency certificate, with the other conditions being you have a lease agreement, an annual lease agreement demonstrating you have a place to stay and live, having 6 months bank statements, valid Emirates ID and residency visa, etc., etc. So that's as far as claiming tax residency in the UAE. The Ministry of Finance will look at these documents, give you a tax residency certificate that's valid for a year. And it's subject to renewal every year, again, subject to you meeting the same conditions in the next or the subsequent year. The reference to the tax residency in the home country depends on what the local country's rules are. Generally, a country will have somewhere in the range of 180 or 182 days as the threshold to be regarded as for physical stay, to be regarded as a tax resident in a particular country. What it really means is that if you are tax resident in a particular country, you are generally taxable on your worldwide income in that country. So if you're a tax resident in the UAE, you've spent more than 183 days in the UAE, you are taxable on your worldwide income in the UAE, where obviously there is no personal income tax. Where you earn income from sources in other countries, you are taxable in those countries only in respect of sources of income generated in that country. So, for example, if you are a tax resident in the UAE, you spend more than 183 days in the UAE, and let's say that you have property in Nigeria or South Africa, which you have given out on rent, and you earn rental income on that property. Certainly that rental income would most likely be subject to tax in that local country, in South Africa or Nigeria in my example, but it will only be that income that will be subject to tax there. The rest of your income, if that's earned in the UAE or in other parts of the world, will only be taxable in the UAE, where obviously there is no tax.
Right. Very good. That explains quite a bit. Alistair, we have a good question here. It says, what about the paid up capital? Is it required in the free zones? What are the minimal capital requirements for the different structures to set up in the UAE?
Absolutely. I mean, paid up share capital here is now pretty rare for it being a mandatory requirement. That's both free zone and mainland. So nearly all of the non-Dubai based free zones do not ask you for any paid up share capital anymore. A certain amount of the Dubai free zones are still asking for it. DMCC, for example, in the JLT area, asks for 50,000 dirhams. But there are many free zones that don't ask for it. In the mainland now, unless you have, let's say, a restricted activity, and I take, for example, manufacturing activities or industrial activities, paid up share capital is still required here. But on the broad range of your regular trading and service-based activities, no paid up share capital is required. So generally speaking, you don't require it here anymore unless you have a very niche activity.
Excellent. We have also another comment from the audience. Is actually saying, compared to other jurisdictions in the case of Dubai, but in other jurisdictions like in the BVI and the Isle of Man and others, when you set up a company, you don't gain residency. And this is an important thing, that you do get in this residency through setting up in Dubai. Jamie, what else can we explain to the audience of what are the benefits of having a UAE residency?
Yeah, of course. A very good question. I mean, obviously it gives you access to the facilities within the UAE, as we've touched off a couple of points, being obviously a personal bank account and of course a corporate bank account. One thing that often doesn't get asked but should be obviously mentioned is it gives you access to a lot of the GCC countries, and there's actually a list that the UAE have actually provided, where it allows you that flexibility to maneuver between obviously different countries. In addition to that, obviously, if you're looking to obviously have children here and obviously go to school, obtain the likes of driver's licenses, and also just from terms of obviously freedom of maneuvering around the world as a whole, gives you obviously a lot more flexibility. Having a UAE residency from a personal income tax is probably one of the most primary asked and sought for things within the world, of course. So that would really be the traditional kind of questions that people would ask when, well, what are the key benefits of me having this as opposed to where I'm currently residing?
Right. Alistair, we're also able to help investors with sort of bigger structures such as holdings and trusts, formation of trusts and special purpose vehicles in the case of the Abu Dhabi global markets. Can you explain a little bit more on those facilities as well?
Absolutely. I mean, the UAE has two regulated financial free zones in DIFC and in Abu Dhabi Global Market in Abu Dhabi. So these free zones are generally following English and Welsh common law, which a lot of our audience, I'm sure, are much more used to. So you can create structures in these free zones such as trusts, special purpose vehicles, and these structures follow regulations, for example, that I would be very used to coming from the UK. So people that are looking to structure business globally or consolidate global assets or UAE-based assets, utilizing one of these structures in these free zones is highly advisable, because you benefit from the English and Welsh common law and everything that comes with that, but you also benefit for being geographically located in the UAE and taking advantage of the tax benefits here, no corporation tax, personal income tax, or capital gains tax. So we're very busy. We've just opened an office in Abu Dhabi Global Market in setting up special purpose vehicles there, structures there. So anyone that wants to consolidate assets worldwide or here in the UAE, it's a really good and beneficial option. Excellent.
There's a few really good questions coming. Please keep them coming. We have about 90 attendees. One gentleman is saying, can you kindly confirm you're going to be sharing a recording of the webinar? Yes, we will be sending everybody on the list of attendees the entire recorded format. There was a really good question here that I lost for now. Let me see. Here it is. Alistair, I think this goes to you. It says, I want to establish a family-based business where all of my family members are partners in the business. What is the best business structure that would offer flexibility to all the members in terms of visa, freedom to establish subsidiary companies under this structure, and the ability to acquire other companies within the UAE?
Excellent question. A couple of ways we could do this. I mean, again, really does depend. Is this entity going to be used just as a holding entity? If we're looking to consolidate a large number of shareholders, then there's an argument that we firstly create a holding company here, And again, Abu Dhabi Global Market is a great jurisdiction for consolidating huge numbers of shareholders, and then probably look to create a free zone company underneath that, which would allow you to obtain residencies through that. My question would be to the gentleman, how is the company going to operate here in the UAE? Because again, this business model and how the company will function, particularly here in the country, is very important in terms of the jurisdiction we would advise. But if it's just to consolidate assets or consolidate a large number of shareholders, then using a free zone such as Abu Dhabi Global Market would make sense. And if we're looking to get residency visas as well, then looking at one of the, potentially the Northern Emirate Free Zone, Sharjah Media City Free Zone, for example, Fujairah Credit City Free Zone, to obtain those visas. So yeah, I'd love to hear more, and I will leave my email address to that gentleman so we can have a further discussion on that.
I suggest if you guys can start putting your email addresses on the chat box so that people can start taking our details and connect with you personally. Jamie, there's also another good question here that says, apart from company registration and company formation, do you assist companies with other services? For example, one of them that might require networking services and support.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the key things which we're actually now launching, which is basically an application which connects you with over 36,000 clients from Creative Zone. That enables you to connect with them, promote your services, and to engage with them through a networking base. Ideally, what we would normally do is our traditional method, which is where we'd host a monthly networking meeting within downtown Dubai, just by our office. However, what we've seen over the course of the past 3 months is really kind of pushed for more need of obviously having an online base to network people. So absolutely, that app will be coming live now very shortly, where it enables you to connect with them. It's only privy to those who are actually with Creative Zone. It's not really a case that you can engage unless you're actually registered under one of our company setups.
Excellent. Nilesh, there was another question here that I'm trying to look for. We're getting so many questions that I'm losing the track of them. But there was someone that was reflecting, saying there's still quite a little bit of unclarity when it comes to ESR. And he was referring more to the issue of being a Dubai-based company versus a free zone. How does this play when it comes to the different formats and ESR in itself? And we know that ESR is upon us. There's a lot of, the dates of submission are within this month, and some of them have pushed it for July as well.
Yeah, I mean, ESR applies to all companies in the UAE, and the government has clarified that it applies to all entities, whether they're located in the free zone or in mainland, including if you're an offshore company. So ESR applies to all companies. It applies to all companies, but only those that carry on one of those 9 relevant activities. So not all companies are impacted by ESR. It's only if you conduct one of those 9 activities, which are, and let me see if I can get this right first time around. It's distribution and service centers, it's holding companies, it's IP company, it's a lease finance business, it's headquarters business, banking, insurance, investment fund management, and shipping. So if you're conducting one of these 9 activities, and there are obviously detailed definitions and descriptions around what each of these activities mean, it's only one of those 9 activities that are in scope. And generally, if you set up a company in the UAE that provides services to or performs a headquarter function for foreign group companies, or carries on a trade with where there is imports or there is purchases from a foreign group company and resell of those goods outside the UAE, then those activities are in scope. If there are any intercompany loans being provided, UAE being used as a central treasury hub for financing the operations in the region, those activities will be in scope of the economic substance regulations, but it applies to all companies, free zone, mainland, and offshore companies. And there are obviously notification and reporting requirements that come in on an annual basis that needs to be complied with. So it does increase some level of compliance and governance and transparency in terms of how businesses need to operate in the UAE. But if you look at what's happening in other parts of the world, UAE is just participating in OECD's global coordinated attempt at combating tax evasion and tax avoidance structures. So it's probably not a bad thing. In fact, does improve UAE's credibility as a country. And having substance is probably not a bad thing in terms of you want to legitimately have profits in the UAE which are not subject to taxation. Some level of substance to back those activities and those profits is probably in the right spirit of conducting businesses and business in the UAE. Excellent.
And so for the people that are setting up right now, they will have another year to submit their tests for ESR, correct?
That's right. Yes.
Good. Right. Okay.
But as part of the setup, it's probably good practice to think about how they would go about meeting the substance test as part of the setup procedures. But yes, the compliance will follow next year.
Right. Jamie, there's a good question here. It says, what are some of the most popular businesses and activities that newcomers can start in the UAE right now? What are the hot type of companies that people are setting up in Dubai?
A huge one would definitely be e-commerce. Over the course of the past 3 months since we entered, I suppose, this pandemic and we've been coming out of it, we have found that e-commerce has been the most sought after business activity due to the nature of the business and how they can actually trade online, while they're still using third-party logistics companies within the UAE to deliver the goods, or simply just to acquire a payment gateway. In addition to that, we've also seen a huge volume of people looking at delivery services and food and beverage trading activities, but they would be the primary three.
Excellent. Alistair, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, to echo Jamie there, I mean, there's been a huge spike in interest, not just in e-commerce, but online businesses. I think this pandemic has really shone a light on businesses, and businesses have been forced to move services online and offer services and products via online platforms. So we're seeing a huge amount of even service-based companies who want to deliver services via online platforms as well. So definitely online platforms. What we're also seeing is trading companies here, particularly people trading medical equipment, PPE equipment, a natural interest and spike in interest in that. And then of course, you've still got your service-based activities. So your consultancies, your tax and accounting advisors, particularly with these ESR regulations coming in, a lot of companies are setting up to advise people on that. So it's still a broad mix, but there's definitely a spike in the online based activities.
Alistair, we have a good question here. It says, we have a business registered in South Africa in the branding and communications space. How do we expand to Dubai with these services? Do we have to register within the UAE to offer our services?
Generally speaking, if one is looking to offer services and render services inside the country, you should have a locally issued trade license, either a free zone or a mainland license. Services can be rendered from abroad, but general rule of thumb here is if you want to do business here, you need to get a local trade license. In terms of how we would structure that sort of business, again, depending on the nature of the activities, depending on visa requirements, commercial space requirements, we could look at either free zone or mainland. But again, those variables come into play, particularly who they're looking to do business here with as well. So absolutely, if the gentleman wants to get in touch, my email address is in the chat box. Please feel free to drop me an email.
Right. Nilesh, there's a question that might relate to tax here. It says, for someone working as an independent consultant and broker in the real estate sector, doing deals in Europe and US only, what would be the best structure to set up and from a tax point of view?
Well, I think you could certainly set up a company here that operates and does these deals. I would imagine in order to be doing real estate brokerage activities for European markets, I mean, you really need to be present there. I mean, I would struggle to see how you would physically conduct that business without having local presence in the country where the real estate is located. You could have a master holdco here, a master company in the UAE that then has the management sitting in the UAE that operates the real estate brokerage business. But generally, if there's any commission that you would earn from a particular deal that you would close, in a particular market would generally be subject to tax in that local country where the real estate is located. And in very rare situations, you may be able to avoid that. But there are certain other activities like brokerage advisory services that you can certainly conduct from the UAE by setting up a UAE offshore company. Not offshore company, but maybe a free zone company in the UAE. Which free zone we'll have to obviously, with Creative Zone's guidance, see what's the best free zone to do this in. But I would say a free zone structure, with management sitting here, advisory coming in from here, is probably good. But be aware that local commission would most likely be taxed in the country where the real estate is located.
Right. Good point. Another one for you, Nilesh. He says, if you're on a free zone visa, are you permitted to take up employment with any other company in the UAE?
Not sure if it's the right question for me. My understanding is that you can there's some level of dual employment provisions that have come in the UAE. I'm not as close to the rules, but I think there are some free zones that give you a license, gives the company a license to operate on mainland without having a mainland entity, and that would presumably mean that the employees that have a free zone visa can also conduct business for the mainland license. So there are some dual employment rules. We'll need to look at that a bit closer. It's not my area of expertise, but there's certainly some provisions there to have dual employment.
Excellent. We'll reply that back on an email as well. Thank you for that, Nilesh. We have another question here from Bassam Hamad. He says the banks are requesting an amount of around 50,000 to 250,000 dirhams in the account to be opened. Does it make it difficult for individual companies to open an account? What can you do? Jamie, how is it that we can help people with these minimum requirements for setting up a bank account?
Very good question, very broad answer in a sense that different banks will have different requirements in terms of deposits for opening up the accounts. And that will also depend and actually affect the timeline to get your account open. Generally speaking, we'd have a lot of SMEs in similar situations when we provide them with solutions where they could start from 20,000 to 25,000. There is alternative options out there that you don't normally see advertised where there's a minimum balance of zero essentially. However, realistically speaking, when it comes to actually getting the company account open, it can really affect the timeline. We would generally recommend that you are willing to put at least 20 to 25,000 dirhams in. And depending on your business operation, we can connect you to the concierge team who will then advise based on how you're going to be operating on which bank will be best for you.
Excellent.
Just to chime in there, Lorenzo, these amounts that we're referring to here are what's called retaining balances. They're not fixed deposits. That money is liquid cash. It should be used as working capital for the company. So there is no real fixed deposit. What the banks want to see is an average amount maintained in the account each month. And as long as you're doing that and it's in and around what the bank are asking for, 20, 25, 50,000, whatever it is, there won't be any sort of repercussions from it. But I think it's important to note this is not fixed deposits. It is liquid cash. It's just a retaining balance they're asking for. Right.
Bassam Hamad, I can see that you are asking a few more questions about ESR. You apparently are a client of Creative Zone. We're going to reply to you directly on your email and send you all the information about ESR. You can contact your client relationship manager as well. I understand that you're in touch with someone on an email. We'll be able to give you more information on this. Alistair, another topic that we thought it would be good to comment on this webinar is the fact that we have recently opened up the possibility of helping people set up their companies in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has also become quite an attractive place for many people to do business. Many investors do that from Dubai, but many more want to go further and set up in Saudi. What is it that we can do for investors on the Saudi side of things?
Absolutely. So we're very excited to be in Saudi Arabia. It's a very exciting time in Saudi. There is sweeping reform and sweeping changes coming in Saudi Arabia. It is the largest economy in the GCC region. So we're offering similar setup solutions than we offer here in the UAE. Saudi Arabia company setup is a little bit more complex. There's a few additional requirements. It's certainly not as straightforward, one would say, as setting up here in the UAE. But no, we're very excited to be there. It's a very exciting time. And if anyone has any questions on Saudi Arabia company setup, please do get in touch, because as you've said, we've just opened and we're receiving huge interest from it. So please do get in touch.
Excellent. Well, we are soon reaching the end of the webinar. We have another 4 or 5 minutes left. Maybe Jamie, what would be your sort of conclusive messages for the people looking at this webinar on why they should consider Dubai and the UAE as a place for them to set up their companies?
Yeah, realistic. I mean, look, I think as we looked at some of where people are kind of tuning in here from overseas, I myself personally had the opportunity to speak with a lot of people yesterday from Zimbabwe, Nigeria, and Mozambique, all very interested in setting up a company within the UAE for the primary aspect of being able to invoice locally from a Dubai-based account, and also having access to a personal account, obviously, too. In addition to that, they also wanted that flexibility. Obviously, as you know, there's new areas open within the region. Obviously, obtaining a residency visa gives them that flexibility to a certain degree to maneuver. But I think that the key thing here is, and to come back at one of those points that we lightly ever so touched off on, is company formation fees are at an all-time low to what I've seen so far. And I'm sure Alistair will confirm that as well from his time in Creative Zone. It is a real prime opportunity to set up your company at the moment, given the fact that the barriers to entry are a lot lower now, and flexibility to operating locally and overseas are quite straightforward. Of course, obviously obtaining residency too is taken into account. So I think it's a huge opportunity, which we've actually seen double the amount of figures over the course of the past 2 months.
Excellent. Thank you, Jamie, for that. Nilesh, what would be your closing statements from a tax point of view, ESR point of view? What can we tell the audience?
Yeah, I think my closing comment would really be similar to my opening one, which is given the given that it's no corporate tax, no personal tax, no withholding tax environment, extremely strong political and fiscal regulation in the country, UAE continues to be attractive from a fiscal, regulatory, and tax standpoint. You do need to be mindful of the economic substance regulations and set up in a manner where your activities are supported by substance and genuine economic substance in the UAE, which is a new regulation. But UAE still remains very committed to having a very open tax environment to do business and an attractive tax environment to conduct business for the region, particularly for Africa. And it can help in bringing your effective tax rate down significantly if planned properly.
Excellent. Nilesh, thank you so much for that. Alistair, your final comments. And in fact, we have one question from a gentleman called Alan Mzungu. He's saying, for the cost for setting up a free zone company in Dubai, please confirm whether the package of $2,000 includes all costs and fees.
Absolutely. So Dubai free zones are generally a bit more expensive. You're looking around $5,000–6,000 starting for Dubai-based free zone. $2,000 would be for a Northern Emirate free zone. But again, it really depends where we set up the business in terms of cost. So if that gentleman could drop me an email, I'd be happy to answer his questions. In terms of sort of closing comments, just to echo what Jamie and Nilesh have correctly said there, it is a great time to come to the UAE, to set up in the UAE and get residency here. It's one of the best and most attractive tax climates in the world. Company formation and residency visa processing is as cheap and as straightforward as it's ever been. Those traditional barriers of setting up both in the free zone and the mainland have now been removed. And it really is a great time. And what I would say to everyone is take advantage of these offers. I am convinced that they will not stay around, you know, sort of beyond the latter part of this year, once we're fully out of this crisis. So it's a great time, and I would urge everyone who's even thinking about it, please do get in touch with us. All our consultations are free. You know, we'd be happy to discuss and answer any questions you may have.
Excellent. Great. So Alistair, Jamie, Nilesh, thank you so much for taking part in this webinar and sharing all this information and knowledge. To the attendees, to 80 people that are still connected there, thank you so much for connecting. It's a pleasure to have been able to get to know you and to connect with you. The emails of Jamie, Alistair are there. Nilesh, you are more than welcome to put your email there as well. But nowadays with LinkedIn and all the different platforms out there, it's very easy to reach all of us. We are going to be sending you a copy of this webinar. We have your email details. Nilesh also, I'm happy to share those details with you so that people can get in touch with you as well. Yeah, thanks again for taking part of this webinar. And we look forward to keep on working with you and inform you on your decisions of setting up your business here in Dubai and the UAE. Once again, thank you. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you. Bye-bye.